I'm going to have it up here like I promised, and if there's any confusion over what we're talking about throughout the evening, I told residents I'd at least look at it and try to help, since we have encouraged everyone not to come here tonight. So let us call this meeting to order. We'll start by the Pledge of Allegiance. And who has the invocation? Okay. So Cub Scout, before we start, Cub Scout Pack 241, led by Josh Simpson, was supposed to have been here tonight to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance for a patch. Instead, due to obvious reasons, they're watching the meeting by way of live streaming. Is it up? So even though we can't hear them or see them, we know they're out there. So they will lead us in the pledge from where they are, and we will join. So I hope they take a picture of it. Please, Josh, take a picture or video and send it to us, and we'll post it on Facebook. So Scouts, hit it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Most merciful and heavenly Father, we come now realizing that you're the maker and the creator of heaven, earth, and all mankind. Father, in your word, it says, my people which are called by my name shall humble themselves, pray and seek my face, and turn from the wicked ways. Then I will hear from heaven and heal their land. Father, I ask now that you heal us from this terrible disease. Father, touch us all and make us safe. Father, give us the wisdom and understanding how to deal with such a tragedy. These and all other blessings in your Son, Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
And thank you, Councilman Hamilton. Mayor Pro Tem, I'm looking to see if we're live streaming. But I don't see it, but we are. Okay. Let me check on that. We'll move to the adoption of the agenda. Are there any changes?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to propose an addition to your agenda tonight under Article 9, adding a new Section 2, to consider an emergency ordinance, 1, temporarily suspending normal operating procedures for town council meetings and other public meetings and setting standards for electronic meetings. In other words, if we can't get together in person like this, we can do it electronically. 2, to authorize the town manager to develop and enact plans and policies. 3, suspension of certain municipal town deadlines. And 4, to extend the tax compliance until June 1st in accordance with the governor's 4 p.m. news conference this afternoon, where he made that a statewide edict. There's a draft of this motion. I emailed it to you earlier today. That was a 2 o'clock version. You now have on your dais in front of you the ordinance that we would propose to add by this amendment to the agenda.
Well, may I ask, clarify,
Yes.
the tax deadline?
Governor McMaster, at his news conference this afternoon, declared that all tax filings in South Carolina are extended until June 1st, including all municipal deadlines for H-tax, et cetera. So he's extending all that. And the rationale that he expressed, if you didn't get a chance to see his talk this afternoon, was a cash flow.
Right.
To keep small businesses afloat as best we could.
So that'll be added to the agenda. Is there any other change on it? Remind me of that, because I don't have a pen.
No other changes.
No other changes. Any other changes, Mr. Orlando? With that addition, is there a motion to approve the agenda? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous. Next are our minutes from our meeting of February 11th. If there were any changes, if not, is there a motion to?
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor, state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous. Communications from mayor, no, public comment. We do have a public comment, and when she comes in, I might just stop.
She said.
Oh, she is right in front of me. I don't have a public comment card. have a public comment. Sharon, could you fill it out after you finish so we can have it for record, or after you finish? Sharon Brown, if you can state your name and address, come to the front, 3 minutes, and name and address, and be mindful. Thank you.
mindful, I'm
And
very
if you'll come get this and fill it out
Yes,
and give it
ma'am.
to Kim at the end.
My
I'd
3 minutes
appreciate
hadn't started yet, have
it. We're going to start it right when you say your name.
Good evening. My name is Sharon Brown. I live at 163 Buck Island Road. And I want to just thank you guys for allowing me this comment time here. I also want to thank Heather, you guys, for the meeting that you put together for Buck Island and Simmonsville Road. I just sent you guys an email with some pictures. And this is in reference to the agreement that you all have with the Bluffton Eagles Action Committee. And it states that the town council has identified the upgrade of Eagle Field as a high priority, and that was back in 2016 with the strategic plan. Now, the governing body, they are the one who handles the field, and as you can see, if the pictures came through, something's broken because our field is right there. The sign, the Bluffton Eagles field that's on the corridor of Bluffton Parkway, is rotting away. If you guys see the pictures from 2014 to 2020 right now, the steps to the concession stand is even rotting away. Why am I here talking to you guys? Well, because I know that you all have a partnership with that organization, and if somehow you guys can reach out to them and try to assist them and go ahead and making our field a recreational field like it was intended when they demolished those 3 acres for the Bluffton Parkway and gave an lump sum of money, and nothing has happened. So if you see, but also you guys have in your agreement here, it says that the committee must provide the town appropriate documentation of the committee's corporate and 501c status and maintain such through the lifetime of the agreement. Well, this organization status with corporate has been suspended 2001, 2014, 2016, and 2019. So somewhere in there, you guys had the agreement. I don't know what the repercussions of from it being suspended, but somebody did not do their research very well in reference to the organization. Now, the governing body, why? Because of the disrespect that I've reached out to them, asking them just to do a community event where you give us what your future plans is for the field. That's not asking too much of an organization. I was told that the organization will not, and I repeat, will not meet with the community because they don't have to. And it's a public organization. So if you guys can assist this organization to please help our recreational field become what it's supposed to be, those pictures there are just shameful. That board has been on that, been together for 7 years. 7 years, and if you guys see it, you're out there with the National Night Out, you tell me how it looks. Look at the bathroom, look at the field, look at the rotten wood, and something's broken if an organization cannot be transparent and let the community, Buck Island, Simmonsville Road, that's what that field was supposed to be utilized for, to help us bring our kids together and any family in this community, but something's broken when I'm continually being disrespected, and I'm going to keep coming back. It doesn't matter to me, because it only takes one to change things, okay? Thank you so much.
Public comment is over.
And who can I email and ask about the suspension and what you guys do when it's...
You give the public comment card there to Sharon, and Mark will get with you on your other questions. Communications from mayor and council. I'll look to the right first. Anything? Communications from mayor and council. I'll look to the left. We are on Facebook Live. If Tommy's here, I do want to check. Oh, there's Tommy. I do want to see how I can pull up comments. If there's anything, I'll get with you. But I hope we have a few people that are watching. Just please stay in touch with our local officials. We're sending out blogs. Our newspaper, Kason's here. We're getting with them on a regular basis about what's going on. We are really, our hands are tied when you have a president of the United States and our governor telling us what to do pretty adamantly. And we just have to hunker down these next 15 days and live a new normal and help each other. And someone said the other day, when the tide is out is when you repair your dock. And I think it says a lot. So it's time now. The tide is out. it's gonna come back in, and we just need to take note of what we're doing and get our game plan together and help each other. So, spread love and kindness and patience and calm, and be totally aware of what's going on by following us. There. It is St. Patrick's Day. Happy St. Patrick's Day, except 4 of us are not wearing green. So, a shame on us. And be totally aware of what's going on. There it is, Fred. Fred's so engaged in this, he's going to watch it on Facebook with me. Anyway, workshop agenda, which is very important, which is one of the reasons we're here tonight, to really start going over our UDOs. So we will start this with number 1 is discussion of town-operated public amenities. Scott Marshall.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The purpose of tonight's workshop is to just remind you of the facilities that we currently have available for rental, and to be mindful going forward that since we have adopted the last fee schedule, we have quite a few more facilities that could possibly be added to that list. And so the purpose of tonight's discussion is to get your thoughts on where we go forward from here with regard to those potential facilities. So as a reminder, the current facilities we have that we rent out are the Rotary Community Center at Oscar Fraser Park, the Field of Dreams at Oscar Fraser Park, which does not include the recently constructed pavilion, and Oyster Factory Park, both the west side and the east side. These are venues that you can consider adding to the fee schedule and we can make available for rental. They include the Wright Family Park. This is a park, as you know, it's currently under construction. The hours that you have already established for this park in a previous session were sunrise to sunset, and you have previously said alcohol, smoking, and fireworks are strictly prohibited. We also have the dog park at Oscar Fraser Park. Again, the hours are sunrise to sunset. We prohibit alcohol and fireworks unless a permit has been granted, and smoking is prohibited. DeVos Park, which we have never offered for rental, but while we're discussing it, we are throwing out all of our properties that have potential. Not that we're recommending it, it's for discussion. DeVos Park, again, hours are sunrise to sunset. Alcohol and smoking are strictly prohibited. Fireworks are prohibited unless a permit has been granted. We have the Martin Family Park, which has been newly constructed, and the established hours of operation, just like the other sunrise to sunset. We strictly prohibit smoking and alcohol, and fireworks are also prohibited unless you have a permit. We also have the Ulmer Auditorium. There are no established hours of operation for the Ulmer Auditorium. We do have a license agreement with May River Theater that gives them priority for usage. However, there is still capacity within that theater to offer it, to make it available for others if we choose to do so in our fee schedule. New Riverside Park, which is still pending a conceptual plan, but we can discuss what we may want to do with that, or we can table that for later. Then we also have the public park at Buckwalter Place Commerce Park, which is nearly complete, but we will discuss, we prefer to discuss possible rental exclusive of the Veterans Memorial, which is considered sacred space. We've polled some other communities that have a similar memorial, and they do not offer it for rental. They keep it as sacred space for certain ceremonies and events and groups who sponsor those events. So the next steps are, pending direction from council, we will incorporate any necessary additions to the master fee schedule as part of the 2021 consolidated budget process. And we'll adopt and implement any administrative procedures we need to support the additional venues that we plan to offer for rental. That said, we can go through each one if you have thoughts on any particular one. If there are some that you just absolutely think should not be put on the fee schedule and we should maintain as is. For example, DeBose Park has always been first come, first served. Not sure that's something you would want to change, but there are some properties that would be easier than others to take a look at. But, I'm willing to look at them in whatever manner you choose.
Let's go one by one.
I'm sorry?
Let's go back to the first one.
Okay.
And then maybe move through it that way.
Sure.
What do y'all think? So Rotary,
So first is the Rotary Community Center, which that's the rental list. Hang on, Wright Family Park, which is currently under construction. That is According to the covenants in the sale, we bought it together with the Beaufort County Open Land Trust, and one of the specifications was that it will remain a passive park. So we won't have active features on the park. As you know, we have the Squire Pope Cottage there that we will eventually rehabilitate, similar to the Garvey House. But the rest of the property is wide open and has a nice scenic view to the river.
So, Wright Family Park, you're asking for, if it's rented, we have hours of operation and we prohibit alcohol, smoking, and fireworks, even if it's a special event
Yes,
for
ma'am.
any reason.
You've already done that. The question remains on all of these parks. I don't recommend we revisit the rules, but I do recommend we consider whether we want to offer them for rental or not.
Offer them
For
for,
rental or not.
okay. So, Wright Family Park, is there an issue with renting that out? Or you're asking renting or keep it first come, first served basis, like
Ma'am.
Dubose Park?
Right.
Want to even,
May
uh-huh.
we don't even know what it's going to be, the Squire Pope House at this time. And I think until we determine what the use will be of the building, I don't know that I would want to do anything at this time.
Wright Family Park, not.
Excuse me, the Wright family. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
got it wrong.
No, no, you have it right, I have it wrong. I was thinking Martin Family Park.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, then let me ask the question a different way.
Yeah.
Dubose, for example.
Yes.
Which is adjacent to it, and I'm sorry about getting off on
No,
the
I
wrong
got you
subject.
wrong. We're on Wright
The,
Family Park. We're
No,
not.
we're
Let's
on
start
right.
over.
We're on the river.
You're correct, I'm wrong.
We got to
Yes.
talk about this one first.
Okay. Wright Family Park, yes.
Okay,
Sorry.
back, okay.
Yes.
All right. My only comment was, until we know the usage, we have never assigned a use of the building once we finish it.
Right.
So I personally don't see the need to do anything with it at this time.
Okay.
So we would still have it open?
We would have it open,
But
yes,
we're
if-
not renting it, and if somebody wants to open it up for a birthday party like they do at Dubose, that would be the opportunity, but there's going to be no alcohol allowed
That's
on
correct.
that park.
That's correct.
I-
It would be
I-
first come, first served with the rules you already have in place.
Any thoughts on this from council?
What's the scheduled opening date for access to that?
Sunrise to sunset.
Like, it's going to be available for someone to show up for a birthday party, for instance? The Wright Family Park?
When the
When
park
will
is
it be
complete?
completed?
Yeah.
As of last week. Most likely a June, July timeframe. You know, we have a slower schedule than what we first anticipated, mainly because we found those artifacts and those pilings and foundation on the ground. So that's added some time to the shot clock. Our goal is to have that up and running as a real park, with the exception of the house, of course, summer. Brian's not here tonight. He'd give you an exact date and lets you know exactly where that schedule is. So we've got a couple more months out there. You have April and May. I'm hoping it's open and ready for June use. We're having a ribbon cutting out there. Right? No, right. May, then it'll be done by May. But with this new.
Is this needed for your budget to know how to put your fee schedule in? Is it something we can look at again, like mid-fall?
We can always amend the fee schedule later if need be.
So do y'all want to just hold off until this is more complete to discuss the rentability of it?
Yeah, we have too many unknowns at this time, you know, with the Squire Pope Cottage, what we're going to do with it. So whatever, I think we should hold off until we're completed.
So that takes us up to the dog park, which is a completed property. It's already in operation, but we do not offer it for rental currently.
Have requests, do we receive requests for people wanting to rent the dog park?
A birthday party?
I seem to recall at least one request. I cannot recall who it was from, but I do recall one request, and we had to say it's first come, first serve, like other open park facilities.
For Doggy Day?
Or
Dog wedding or something. I don't know what it was.
something like that. There's not a
That's
huge
surprised I
demand,
could
so.
see someone.
I think it should be used for everybody.
Right.
Agree.
Yeah. Okay, so we're not going to consider that as a rentable.
Oh, ma'am.
Okay.
Moving on.
Move on.
DuBose Park.
But right now, have you had any issues with this first come, first serve?
We have not. It seems to have settled into a nice pattern. The community knows how it's used. We don't really have a lot of conflict with that park. At one time, we had groups out there exercising early in the morning and issues with the neighbors, but we were able to get those worked out. But that said, it wasn't through a rental that they did that. So I don't think there's a huge problem in this area unless I'm missing something.
Problem with keeping it the way it is, or do you see that it should be rented?
I don't know that it should be rented. I know that I have had, correspondence with people wondering if there is a place they could go to reserve it for, typically for kids parties and other things like that. And I haven't really had a direction. I've gone under the same guise it's been, that it's first come, first serve. So I don't know if popularity of that particular park has increased and we might want to go in that direction. But I know there are questions of uncertainty for some people on how they go to reserve it before someone else does.
Yeah, since I live there, I see it used frequently, and I've even seen as many as maybe 3 or 4 birthday parties in a day there. And some people actually will be under the pavilion, and some people move over to the grass, but I've not seen anybody punching each other out over the fact that they couldn't get to it and use it. And I think most people do understand the mechanism that we have in place for it. And finally, the last thing would be is when we have a signature event, for example, there's even an understanding there. They coordinate all that with the town manager and the police department. So I've not seen any obstacles to date to interrupt that.
But it's going to be hard to change once we've been on this path. And like you said, they are somewhat considerate. I get calls more like, can we rent it? And when I tell them it's first come, first serve, then I don't hear anything else. But I think with Martin Family Park, personally, if we can keep both of them kind of flexible, then that overflow could go over in that area too. So we're opening up more park space. But I'm going to look to y'all and police. Have y'all been getting calls on disruptions and complaints, or?
I could answer. I think at first, folks, when we first built the pavilion at DuBose Park, people were expecting to be able to rent it. I think they've all figured it out, like 2 moms trying to rent the same space at the same time for a birthday party early on. I think it's just been worked out where the expectation that's set is just share it. Like Councilman Wood said, people will show up and share DuBose Park. We've never had an issue there where I've ever fielded a complaint that I couldn't rent the pavilion or the space.
And I'm kind of not humoring, but I'm respecting some of our usual from here. And I'm just watching some of these comments, so I'm not going to break in at all of them. But somebody did just mention, is there, what do other parks do if it is free? And we just kind of want everyone to know who's there. Is there some technology we could use? I'm going to be at the park here. It doesn't mean they have the whole park, but it lets others know they may be one of 2 other groups there. I mean, is that pushing it? Is it something we can look into, kind of a first come, first serve? We're not charging rent, but let us know if you're going to be there. I don't know, just a thought.
We could try. A lot of that is just self-reported. If it's not mandated, it's self-reported, and we could definitely put the word out and even post a sign that says, if you're going to use this, just let us know. Self-reporting, we're only going to rely upon the best information we have. We don't have any software or technology in place that you could easily plug into and say, I'm here, per se.
But it could help too, y'all to know, because I know I've been to the parks in the past and there is alcohol. It does give us a heads up that someone's there to enforce that, because you don't want the alcohol there with kids playing on the playground. And I have seen it, quietly, but if we're enforcing no alcohol and we don't know if there's a party going on, and I don't know, it's just a thought to.
I would say it'd be good too to have some type of tracking or reporting in the event that someone leaves it a mess or something's damaged. If there's no documentation of who's out there, how do you know who to follow up with or who to even charge maybe those damages too, if something like that would happen.
If we got into that, so I'm going to jump in, then we're going to have to schedule this, because I don't want to rely upon holding people accountable that I may or may not know who they are. They're not going to tell us who they are if they leave the place a mess. And we're out there a lot. We have cameras out there, so I think we're monitoring it well. But we either have to do it or not do it.
Let me jump in. I think your point's good, Bridget, but I would offer that so far it hasn't been an issue, and we can always come back to it if it is.
But I don't, changing it, the county has some rules that I think also valuable to us. If you have a group more than 25, I think the county requires you to get permission to use it. I think it's as long as we are providing it to be free to use, at first come, first serve, I think that's fair. I think that's where we designed when we initially built the parks. So more open space, green space for our residents to use at their convenience.
I've attended a lot of birthday parties up there. I think it's fine the way it is. I think it would get too complicated if you tried to end it out for one thing. You have too much overlap, if somebody pays $25 or $50 or whatever it is, and they have a deal with the town that's theirs, you're taking it away from the entire rest of the community because they have sole rights to it. And the way it's been done before, even if you had a little head bumping here and there, I think people work through it. And those moms and dads that have birthday parties scheduled for a day, they're going to go up there at daylight and start putting their decorations up, and they're going to watch it and stay with it, and getting out of there earlier so somebody else. I don't think it's broken now, so I'd say leave it.
All right, I'm not saying that it should be rented, but going to a point that Lisa made, if we do have people who are out there who are using alcohol at a party, and we have in the rules that it's prohibited, it becomes an issue of uniformity. And some people are saying, well, when I had a party out there, we weren't allowed to do that because it's in the rules, but I drove by and someone else is doing that, and it becomes a matter, well, how come, no one enforced that? And if we're not enforcing it, then it becomes an open thing. Well, then I can just show up and do it too, since there's nothing, holding me to that particular ordinance.
Respectfully, I think that's an enforcement issue, and you would have that issue whether you rented the facility or whether you had it on first come, first served basis. If we do the avenue where we would try to hold accountable a person who did that, then we need to enter into a contract, which means now we do need to put it on the fee schedule, and we do need to rent it out if we're going to go that route.
Well, I think with DuBose and Martin family together, I wish there was some signage to at least give us a heads up. They're going to have something, like Fred said, the county has a 25 or more. I don't know how you can be vague on that, but just a phone call or an email to our special events team on our new website one day that says, it doesn't mean they're the only ones that have it. We're not blocking it off for everyone, but just give us the heads up if you're going to be there. If they don't, they don't. I mean, it's going to take some while to change habits.
But
I think Martin Family Park opening, it's going to be some overflow, and all of a sudden we have a big park, and we might start to see some friction of people wanting to use it at the same time if we don't do something. So I don't know what that is. I think maybe the consensus is to leave it alone, but maybe look into second A, B, and C of what we can do without charging a fee.
As a staff, we can certainly look into that, and we can report back to you later with some options.
How is that,
So,
Ms. Frazier?
I think we've heard what your concerns are, and
Okay.
Enforcement
we'll
of
look
the
at
rules
it.
has nothing to do whether we change it or not. I mean, the rules
Right.
need to be enforced,
Absolutely.
whether it's alcohol or smoking or whatever. So
Right,
we
not
need- we
more
need
so
to
an
do that
enforcement issue, but
now.
like if someone's there and, beer cans or whatever are left, of course, it's the job of whoever the public works are to go, they're cleaning, that particular area. But in terms of tracking who's doing that, because if someone's abusing the use of that park, that shouldn't be someone who continues to have the access to a free park if they're not going to respect the rules. And I'm just saying, if we don't have something like that in place, you can't really, track that. So I'm with Scott's recommendation on looking at some options and coming back or, revisiting that.
May I ask just a point of clarification? The reason this is on here tonight, Councilwoman Frazier, we talked with a request from the MLK committee about having movie night at Martin Family Park. That event, that type of event from a nonprofit would need to, in my opinion, to set up for a movie and use that whole park. Would you all think that that's just first come, first serve, or should that not be reserved and documented under contract, like we do at Oyster Company?
We're talking about two different parks. Right now, we're talking about Du Bois Park.
Right.
Well, I heard Martin Family Park.
Well,
as
I was
well.
just
But
saying.
we haven't got that far yet.
We're moving. I think we let them look at some ideas, and let's look at new technologies and signage, and keep a close look on Du Bois Park, because we're going to have to do it at New Riverside at some point too.
Great.
And at Buckwalter. Is that okay? Okay, so Martin Family Park. Now we're on Martin Family Park.
Sorry.
That's okay. Martin Family Park. You are suggesting, staff is suggesting some kind of rental fee schedule and ability of town manager for nonprofits to work out
Right.
situations with them.
Yes, ma'am, if the expectation is that with nonprofit, so we're going to have 2 or 3 movie nights there by ourselves a year from this point forward. We got a little better at it and kicked that off last Christmas season, so we'll do that again. But if it is a night for a group and a citizens and a neighborhood to come together, I think that's fabulous. But my point is, if you do show up with the movie trailer and the movie screens and you take over the park, I believe that should be a rentable moment, not with a contract, so we know who you are as you're setting up. It's all kind of liability and also just from an operation standpoint. If that's the intention or expectation at Martin Family Park, I suggest you add it to the fee schedule, come up with a nominal price, and rent it no different than we do the Field of Dreams outside of the Rotary Community Center.
Or the Oyster Fetcher Park.
Correct, yes, sir.
I personally think that park, and that's why I was saying we were talking about the
Right.
other
No,
one,
I
not this
appreciate
one.
it.
They're two different parks. One's a playground for kids, and the other one has many uses, like you say, whether it's movie night or whatever.
Right.
I personally was thinking that we would put it on a fee schedule, rent it to special events, whatever. They won't be rented out every day of the week or every night of the week, but if the Arts and Seafood Festival wanted to use it, or, for their thing, or Mayfest, or whatever, if they reserve it and pay for it for that particular day.
I agree.
Church, if they want to do that, that's,
Yeah, and from what my memory is, I think that, this collectively, this council, we always knew that open space needed to be used for some of our signature events and so forth going into the future, because Michael Hahn's lot is not always going to be there. So that was one of the reasons for such open space and looking ahead. That's the way I remembered it. So I think if we have something in place, obviously special permits go to the town manager, so he has advanced knowledge of how to dial that into the calendar when it's necessary. But, yeah.
Renting versus open space tends to be, or free, tends to be the areas where there's playground equipment. They're kids' parks, and we have prohibited smoking and drinking, and you shouldn't be drinking near children playing on playground, period. The open fields, like Oyster Factory and like Martin Family and probably New Riverside and probably Buckwalter, is more space that's open to the public, but there can be places for groups to come in and utilize it for certain events. That's how I'm reading that. Is that right?
I would agree to that if we limit that time that we would rent it out.
Yeah.
Because I don't want it to be, I don't want to take precedence over public can have free access to it the majority of the time. So let's not be afraid to say, no, we can't rent it this time. Maybe we got to come up with a time, how many times a month we would rent it.
Right.
So that it's always available to the public.
Right. I can see it being abused
Yeah,
very easily.
I'm fine with the limit also.
That helps us tremendously with
Right.
manpower as well, so.
Have hours of operation sunrise to
ma'am.
sunset for any use. Okay.
Yes.
And I would say with the special event, if it's a movie,
Right.
the special event permit, I'm sorry to jump in, Scott.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
It exempts, you'd
I
be
know what it-
exempt from the established hours of normal operation, and by special event, you would allow it to be there post-sunset. And
Am I reading this right, Mark, the way it's on here, fireworks aren't prohibited, are prohibited everywhere in the whole county,
Yeah.
even though we listed them.
Yeah.
Like the Arts and Seafood Festival or Mayfest or whatever, if there's event there, if they apply and get a special event permit, are they exempt from the alcohol?
We could amend the ordinance to make that effective, that no alcohol is prohibited except through granting of a
Because actually,
special
Oyster
events
Factory
permit.
Park is the same way,
Right,
unless there's a special event permit.
right,
And that-
So is Field of Dreams.
Correct.
right.
And that's your call. You can say, no alcohol at Martin Family Park when we come forward. I would appreciate some guidance tonight. If you want to allow alcohol there with special events, tonight would be the night to tell us so that Scott can codify this.
I think so. If, under a special event permit, no, when we start talking about the Wright Family Park, we have agreed, all of us, that won't be allowed there.
Right.
Right, because
To keep peace with our church families and all that. But I think it opens up uses and justifies all the money we spent to make it nice and
So do y'all get that?
creative.
Yes, ma'am,
Y'all
we can
understand that?
certainly,
Is that
we can
good
bring
with
an amendment
council?
forward to you when
Agree with Larry.
we can bring an amendment forward to specify a special events permit.
Great,
will
move to
allow
the
those
next
things.
page.
Yeah. Thank you.
Ulmer Auditorium. Y'all's thoughts? Never rented it before?
We do get requests for use of this facility from time to time. To my knowledge, we have not rented it before, and we have a license agreement with May River Theater. They are the primary users and occupants of the facility, and any rentals would have to take place around their activities in accordance with the license agreement we have in place with the theater. So,
I've had a couple of people ask me, small schools and places that just don't have that capability, and they're going to ask for free. Everybody, no one has the money, but
Well,
what do y'all think?
that's going to be, I'm not against, I'm open. Have you opened that, though you're opening up Town Hall to a certain extent, correct?
Correct.
Involve another layer of security or overseeing something you couldn't just open up and.
Correct.
Do we do that with May River?
That with May River will be.
The
through their-
theater, when they come in? we
Through their
just-
license agreement, they have a key and they occupy it, but there's expectations that they leave it in a certain condition, and we've, over time, developed that expectation and relationship. You're saying, Councilman, you open that up, say you open it up for a church group that wants to come together, or some group that wants to watch a quick little movie or have some sort of choir on a Saturday night, we will have to be in the building to open it up, to a degree to monitor it, and then also to make sure that the building is secure as they leave. So it's definitely, to cover costs, those additional costs to do that are different than a cover cost to just open up a park for a pavilion rental. That reason it's on here is it's one of our assets, it's one of our improvements. Never rented it before. I have never allowed use of it beyond MLK Group and the May River Theater Company. My 5.5 years with you.
Would it be something that we, just throwing this out there, that we could possibly offer it to different groups to use during normal business hours? Would that interfere with the operations here? You know, say it's a church group, a group of ladies or men or whatever, they want to use it to meet, or,
I think that would probably depend on the day and the hour. For example, Tuesdays when we have court, I think it would definitely interfere because you're using the same
Parking.
entrance and exits and parking, yes.
I would want to exempt it from regular office hours. I would think, and going back to, say, somebody like you said, a church group or group, we could, if we were so inclined, we could write something up. You pay a nominal fee, but you may have to pay to have an officer here to make sure the building's secure, if that makes sense. I'm just throwing that out as a thought, part of your license contract, you might say, to get to rent it, but that's just a thought.
it's not an easy one.
It's beautiful, and another thought, why don't we go through this year and y'all start collecting who does call and see if it's a big enough need that we look at it next budget year, because I think people are going to see how beautiful it is, and you'll be able to kind of track it, have it a year and see how it goes and decide. What are your
I agree.
We did spend a lot of money on making it nice, along with the rest of town hall, to one small group that's not paying any money.
Yeah.
I mean, we want them to stay here and we want to help them, but have people that question that.
If you get a lot of calls in the next 6 months after it opens, can you bring it back to us and let's look at this?
Absolutely.
And see? Okay. Yep.
I am.
Okay, New Riverside Park, should we just wait until that's finished? Is there any need to even talk about it until it's done?
We don't have a conceptual plan for that.
Great. Public Park at Buckwalter Place, not inclusive of Veterans Memorial. I think it's an awesome place for events, personally. It's open. Do y'all want that on the rental, to set up a fee schedule that we look at Buckwalter Place? It opens up an event space outside of Old Town.
Have we had any inquiries about it, or has anybody heard anybody want to do?
I would say no, but I actually had one. It had to do with the Veterans Memorial in a fundraiser, but the way I see that tracking is once we do cut the ribbon and turn the lights on, we're probably going to see the same demand and the same request that we're seeing for Martin Family Park, excuse me. People are desiring just a big green space to use. They'll put their own tents up, they'll have an event. Who knows? It could be a regular farmer's market out there. It could be Kroger wanting to sell their produce once a month. We don't know.
Culinary school.
Right. Yes, ma'am.
Schedule or free? I think fee schedule. What are y'all?
Yeah, fee schedule.
Fee schedule. Okay. Great. And just on that, I saw 4 people walk in today around our trail at the park. It really feels like it's open now.
So just to recap what I've heard from you, Wright Family Park, we're not going to make a decision on that right now. We're going to wait until the park's complete. Dog Park is a no, we will not rent that out. We will keep that off the fee schedule. DeBose Park, we will keep off of the fee schedule. Martin Family Park, we will place on the fee schedule. We will limit the number of times it can be rented, and we'll make some exceptions for hours and for use of alcohol by special permit, special event permit. Ulmer Auditorium, we will look at next budget year after we've had the newly revised auditorium in place for a while and people get a chance to look at it. New Riverside, we will wait until that park is complete to decide what we're going to do. And Buckwalter Place Park is, yes, we would like to place that on the fee schedule in the coming budget year. Did I miss anything?
Anything? This is a workshop item. We'll see this at first and second reading, or just one read? Is it just one? It will be at budget time.
It will probably, the changes to the fee schedule will be incorporated with the FY21 consolidated budget.
Okay, so that's when we'll see it again. Great, thank you. We have several other workshop items, and these are all discussion points, and these next 3 or 4 will actually be on first and second readings. For those watching, you have time for public comment and public hearing. So this is more of a workshop item, and I am looking down at notes on Facebook, but I will tell you that we have a good mix of open space and public space that we need to charge fees on because we clean up and we provide services to those things. So there are we have a good mix of open space where you can go and sit and a place where people can rent for weddings and parties and such. So, Heather, you're up.
I'm up.
Oh, for the public. This is a discussion on direction on amendments of the Town of Bluffton Code of Ordinances. The Article 4 zoning districts, conditional use standards, and Article 9 definitions and interpretations.
Okay, thank you. So this is a request, again, for those subject matters, the zoning districts, basically the calibration of land uses, conditional uses, storefront and storehouse manufacturing, that will be referenced in Article 9 for definitions because those are proposed as new use classifications, and conditions related to industrial type uses. Just a little bit of background. This was identified in the strategic action plan as something that staff was required to review as far as the land uses, specifically land uses as they relate to what we're referring to as storefront manufacturing. I'll get into that in a little bit, but that's more primarily what appears to be maybe a retail use, but they're manufacturing a product, for example, leather goods or homemade soaps or things like that. And then storehouse manufacturing, which that's more like what we've seen with breweries and distilleries and things like that, that it more is primarily a manufacturing type use with possibly a retail component. So those are two new uses that we're proposing with conditions. The other one that we are continuing to review and look through is the elimination of mini warehouse or self-service storage facilities as a conditional use in the general mixed use district. And then as possibly either a permitted use with conditions in the light industrial or reference as it's only permitted in the planned unit districts. And I'll get into that as far as where in the town these uses and these changes that we're reviewing would pertain. But that's something that we are continuing to review with the town attorneys, and again, as all of these, would like your input on that. The other ones are improvements to existing use conditions, so further clarification on various uses that are permitted in the light industrial district. For example, salvage yards, junk yards, mini warehouses, self-service storage, should they remain in the ordinance, as well as the recycling center and transfer station. So again, just to really codify and make it clear what those use conditions are and move that forward. So in the attachments, and I can pull up those attachments as well if you'd like me to, but there are the uses that are listed out, and I've tried to pull them up in slide format as well. But the table in the zoning district chapter outlines whether or not a use is permitted with conditions, special exception, which would go to the Board of Zoning Appeals for review, or if it's a blank space, it's not permitted in that district. This is the proposed text specifically as it relates to those two proposed new uses that I referenced, storefront manufacturing and storehouse manufacturing, and the different districts that would allow it proposed to allow it by conditions, and again, that's the change to the mini warehouse or self-service storage, conditional and light industrial. And again, that's one use that we are trying to review as to how we reflect conditions for that use or where it should be permitted. The uses that are all in this chart or this table reflect our standard zoning districts. So the Old Town districts, Buck Island, Simmonsville, Gothey Road, it does not apply to the development agreements or the planned unit developments that are under those development agreements. So it wouldn't necessarily pertain to Buckwalter or Schultz Tract or those other agreements, and I do have a map that I will show. Here's the map here. I guess I should have pulled this up first. But anything in that light green, that's bound by uses specific to the development agreement in the PUD language. So the proposed changes as we move forward just would really reflect anything in different colors there, that bottom area, things like that. So as we continue to evolve the language and the where certain uses would be allowed, we would certainly bring you much more detailed information as far as what's allowed where. But again, at this point, we're really just trying to codify the conditions for those uses and just reflect some of the changes specifically in manufacturing over time, where manufacturing may had more effects as far as noise, odor, and things like that to their neighbors, where now it's self-contained and may not have that same impact. So that's what we're trying to reflect in the proposed language. The conditional uses, this is just what's underlined shows the proposed new text. What's crossed off shows what's existing that we would propose to replace it. And this just reflects just a better, clearer explanation of what the conditional use standards are. This gets into more of the proposed language. Again, since this is a workshop based on your direction, this is how staff is starting with that proposed language, and we'll take in the comments from today's meeting. It will have to go to Planning Commission for a public hearing, as well as first and second reading. So this may not be perfect by any means. This is just our first step. So again, that storefront manufacturing, that's more of the retail. What we're envisioning is more of that retail focused use that may have a manufacturing component that in the past we may have had to say no to. Just because of how the uses were defined. So those are some of the conditions that we've outlined, basically related to the storage, loading areas, and things like that, so that the impact to the neighboring properties should be no different than a retail type use. And then storefront manufacturing, again, that's more your breweries, distilleries, and just related to the outdoor impact and storage, the conditions. Moving forward, just some more specifications related to junk and salvage operations, like I said, as there are permitted in the light industrial district, just to increase what that buffer would be between neighboring properties. Of course.
On this manufacturing, because I know that word kind of scares people. Industry and manufacturing, they're so different than what we think of it, but we're changing up some of the things from permitted to conditional, which means there's an added layer of really asking what they're doing. So if there's any added noise, or if we feel there's loud more than what the norm would be, we have the ability to say they can't do it.
Correct. They would have to meet these conditions, and they would have to maintain meeting these conditions as they proceed forward. Again, this is just some proposed text as it outlines with the solid waste and transfer of the recycling center. Again, just codifying and just further reiterating what those conditions are and just outlining some additionals. This is the manufacturing, again, just adding those additional conditions and just making sure that mini warehouse, this is one, again, that staff would, as all of them, would like your input. Right now, the mini warehouses are permitted in some of the development agreement areas, again, depending on the tract and the conditions and the uses that are spelled out for each one. So definitely depends on the specific location. Within the zoning districts, what staff is proposing, it's allowed in the general mixed-use district and the light industrial district currently. There are different ways that we could approach this and continue to talk to the town attorneys and planning commission as well as council, is that we could address it as far as it's not permitted in any of the districts, but then we would have to reference it somehow that it's only allowed in the planned unit areas in those districts, or we could limit it to light industrial with various conditions, and that could be distance between other types land uses, increased buffers, setbacks, height limitations, and things like that. So we can continue to explore that, or we for the light industrial district, or altogether just in the PUDs.
I'm just going to. So on that, I think can we just deeper setbacks. I mean, 15 feet from the property line for a, we can ride by one of many of them and probably see that's, I mean, I would suggest, and it's council and planning commission too, that that should be larger buffer. And the buffer shouldn't be disturbed I mean, let's start trying to integrate all the things we've been talking about. You know, they can't disturb their buffer maybe until post-build or something like that to at least keep those trees there during construction, as opposed to waiting to the end.
Do we want any more mini storage
No, I don't, I was gonna.
units in areas that we can control?
I think we have to look at the map that where they're proposing this, because I don't think it's as obvious and visual as it seemed like it might have been originally. Can you point that out?
Yeah.
So on this map, let's see. So the light industrial district is that purple area. So it is this right here.
That's Buck Island, that's where RSI
RSI,
currently is.
yes.
Can we just not allow it there?
A little bit where the distillery property was also zoned light industrial. So that would be the other thing that we can continue to explore, is to not allow it in any of the zoning districts with the exception of the PUDs and development agreements.
Go back to the purple area.
I think you got 3 people saying we just take it out altogether.
Okay.
I was gonna ask, you know, even in the places it's allowed, you know how we make people do traffic studies? Can they not do a warehouse study and prove to us that it's needed?
I don't know what we can do for the development agreements.
But it's just a thought since we're
It's already
talking.
permitted, but.
Okay, so I think we're in agreement that we can just take it out as a use in that light industrial.
I need to go back to the purple there because I can't tell.
That's RSI.
Right there.
Year-round pools to RSI.
Okay.
I'm just kind of thinking that as much commercial property as we have no choice to allowing or not allowing, it's coming. Let them utilize some of that if we need.
Okay. Okay.
It's not like they're not going to build them if there's a demand and there's a need for them.
Right.
Somebody will.
We can certainly look at language and make it clarified that that's an option. Okay.
Is that complicated to change or not?
So
No, we'll
just
figure
real
it out.
quick on this. So while you have that map, that hot pink is neighborhood core, and you're talking about these new uses. We have a lot of uses currently that are probably non-conforming, but they're grandfathered in.
Yes. Yes, they are.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm
There's a
talking
non.
about Morris and places like that are grandfathered in. We're not going to enforce them to change because we're adding this layer of uses.
No, certainly not. There's and we can, again, bring it forward as we continue to evolve and go through this process. At this time, staff is not proposing any changes to the non-conforming chapter. So businesses are allowed to remain, and then there's also some reestablishment clauses that there's a certain time frame that they can reestablish, and they can do certain amount of changes to the property. And that's something that staff, as part of all of these UDO amendments, that staff has started to think about further to see if that's something that, you know, we should consider bringing forward in the future. But as of now, we're not proposing any additional changes. So businesses that are legally non-conforming can continue to operate as such.
When they're non-conforming, I think you just said they're allowed to do some changes. So when is those changes acceptable?
It depends. I believe it's less than 50% of the assessed value of the structure, the changes that they do. And it depends as far as a nonconformity can't increase. So there's a nonconforming structure, a nonconforming use. So additions and things like that may be limited.
So in other words, if they wanted to buy the lot next door and make it a junkyard too, they can't?
I don't believe so, no.
I don't believe so.
No, they cannot. They cannot. They cannot.
You know.
They cannot, but I don't have the language right in front of me, but no, they would not be able to expand. Like I said, expansion of the non-conforming use is not allowed under the current
Yeah, I
ordinance.
want to go back to that purple area again because all of that is not developed. Portions that are not developed between year-round pool and RSI. Is there any development agreement for those properties?
I'm not aware of any, no, not at this time. But you are correct, RSI does have, the parcel that they are located on is quite large. But I haven't had any inquiries or pre-apps application meetings at this point for any future development.
Okay.
That is it for the first portion of uses.
Excuse me. On the height, you mentioned the height a minute ago?
Yes, that was something that we could review. Like I said, if for conditions
Yeah.
for storage buildings, that's something that if we were to allow it in the light industrial or general mixed use or any of the other zoning districts, that is a condition that we could consider.
I think we want the height limited no matter where it goes.
Yeah, but I think, right, but on this, we're not even going to
Right.
allow it.
That's right.
Right, we're just going to take it out. then.
Limited under the PUDs?
It's already, the height requirements are already listed as a requirement in the PUDs and development agreement.
We're not going to allow it anywhere else other than PUDs. We can't do anything.
It's easy.
Push the envelope a bit.
Yes, we could.
Mark, did you have something?
I would say, yeah, yes, we can push the height. We could try. I think just based upon the language in the development agreement, you're not going to see many other self-storage facilities, if any, probably that high, just based upon districts and language, just from our scrub on it. I also want to make a plug. When we update our comprehensive plan, one of the biggest exercises that we'll do and that we haven't done for a very long time is really test and maybe reassess our future land use map. Once that's intact and we take a look at our future land use map, Heather's going to have a much easier job to start aligning the different zoning districts and putting them in place according to the future land use map. We're going to be very specific what's commercial, residential, or in between. Right now, what Heather's doing, and she's done a terrific job, is just cleaning up the ordinance based upon some current standards. What she isn't doing is what she really wants to dig in and do, but it's a huge exercise, is really rethink some of our zoning districts, what's allowed, what's yellow, what's blue, what's pink. All of that will come when Heather dives into this comprehensive plan. And the first step of that is setting the policy in place, and that's your future land use map. Everything else is easier.
Yes.
Right? I just want
Yes,
to
yes,
back
no,
her
thank
up
you.
and let you all know what she's up to.
So any thoughts on this first item with changes in some of the conditional standards and definitions? I interrupted her through the way, and I think that'd be good maybe to interrupt you in each one and make comments.
Yes,
Are there any
perfect.
other thoughts on this first one? Are y'all good with what she's hearing?
And if I could just recap, from what I've heard and how I understood it, is that mini warehouse self-service storage to only in the PUDs in the development agreement. So we will reflect that. And then also to increase the buffer and increase the setback. No, actually, if we're removing it, we don't need to deal with that. So that's easy. Sorry. The mayor had made a comment that if the setback could be increased, and then also to keep buffers more in place. But if we are removing that as a permitted use, then that's null and void.
Okay. So you got it?
Yep,
So
I got
that, our thoughts will go to Planning Commission. Planning Commission will discuss it, and then it'll come back to us for public hearing, and then first and second reading. So there'll be 2 opportunities with a public hearing for public comment.
Yes, and these dates are subject to change based on meeting schedules and moving forward, but the Planning Commission public hearing will require a 30-day notice in the newspaper, so that's the next step, is the Planning Commission public hearing, and then, like you said, Town Council first reading, and then Town Council second reading and public
We're
hearing.
probably a month off.
Possibly, yes.
Great. Next is discussion and direction on amendments to the code, Chapter 23. general standards related to historic district architectural design.
And this workshop item is related to Article 5, the design standards, and it includes a lot of historic district design regulations, and also just acknowledging and reflecting some consistent decisions that the Historic Preservation Commission has consistently made throughout time, and then also what's the relation. It is the lot widths and the requirement that we use a form-based code, so lots are required to have certain dimensions and frontage, and what we're proposing is that all lot widths be no less than 50 feet moving forward. So again, this is something that staff has worked on as part of the strategic action plan, with just making sure that the UDO is aligned both in substance and also in just some inconsistencies that we have found in the code as we've used it through the years. The Historic Preservation and Planning Commission has been reviewing this throughout, but it would have to go back to them for a public hearing like the previous workshop item. This, I can pull up the matrix. There's a matrix in your packet that lists out all of the different proposed amendments and the reasons and the changes, one of which is, again, related to those lot widths. If there is a lot that has already been subdivided, platted, and recorded that's less than 50 feet, you would be allowed to develop it as such, but you could not create any new lots that are less than 50 feet. It also reflects a lot of, again, historic district requirements. We did work with local architects that use the code quite a bit, and the Historic Preservation Commission. For example, there's a reference to the town architect. We do not have a town architect per se, but just to make that language consistent, and that's the UDO administrator, which would be myself. Also, the easy example I always go back to is shutter dogs, which is the bracket that holds open your operational shutters. There's only one specific type that was allowed per the UDO, and again, over time, as people have asked to do other options, and the Historic Preservation Commission has approved those other options, it's just something that, again, we're reflecting in the code. So that's just the example that's very easy, at least for me to follow, in terms of architecture, to give people the flexibility and the creativity to come up with other options. And like I said, I can pull that up, staff report if you'd like, or if you have any questions.
Any questions or thoughts? It's a simple change, so I don't see anything.
Okay.
So good guidance.
I never knew what a shutter dog was until you told me the last time.
I mean, that's why I like to use that example.
And I do appreciate you sitting
Straightforward.
with us prior to this meeting to go
Yes.
over any questions we have. I
Great.
didn't know what it was either. I didn't know we had to have them. So,
Yes.
Okay, so you've got feedback on that. Next is discussion and direction on amendments to the Town of Bluffton Code of Ordinances, Chapter 23. This is Article 6, Sustainable Development Incentives Workforce Affordable Housing.
So this is what's reflected in Article 4 zoning districts related to plan unit developments and PUDs, specifically affordable and workforce housing provisions, as well as the incentives in Article 6. And again, this just summarizes what those two things are. One is the provisions for affordable workforce housing for new PUDs or amended PUDs, as well as the owner-occupied eligibility requirements for affordable workforce housing. So this is coming before you, again, as part of the Strategic Action Plan, but also through a recommendation through the Affordable Housing Committee for the changes that we're proposing. And the first part of that is in Article 4 zoning districts, all newly created PUDs or amended PUDs are required a provision, a minimum of 10% of their housing units be affordable or workforce housing. So what has been recommended by the committee is to increase that to 20% of the housing units. And we are also, staff's also clarifying that this would include amended PUDs for that particular portion of the PUD subject to the amendment. So for example, if Buckwalter PUD were to add another area or request to add another area or piece of property into that PUD, and it has a housing component, that portion would be required to comply with the 20%. However, not the entire Buckwalter PUD. So that's the first option. And then also that it simply strikes the last sentence that states that the town may accept a fee in lieu of workforce affordable housing. And the reason town staff is requesting to remove that sentence is because we do not have what those requirements would be or what that fee would be listed in the ordinance today. So if that is an option, we need to know what the fees would be and move forward. But since we do not have that in place, we're asking to just simply strike that sentence. The other part of that recommendation from the committee was concerning in the sustainable development incentives. So if you apply for an incentive for increased density, the eligibility requirements currently are at 120%, and the committee has requested that be 100%.
Heather, just one
Yes, sir.
question before you get off of here.
Of course.
The additional units,
Article 6, yes.
tell me what that means. A density bonus of 2 additional market price units shall be allowed for each additional affordable workforce unit. Allows for a density increase of up to 20%. Trying to get my mind around what that says.
So in that chapter, and we're not staff at this point, and the Affordable Housing Committee hasn't made any recommendations to change that, but there is a whole scale of density bonuses that you could receive if you do a certain percentage as workforce affordable housing. And the math gets a little bit complicated depending on what that sliding scale is. But basically, in the residential general zoning district, you're allowed by right 4 units per acre. So if you choose to do you can get more units if you do a certain amount affordable or workforce housing. So it's math and sliding scale to get to that point. But for example, if you do 100, you can go from 4 units. If you have 1 acre, then by right you can do 4, and you want to do 8, you could do so, but they would have to be affordable units and workforce. If you want to do 6, then not all would have to be.
Let's do some comparisons. So the way what I think I'm seeing the way this says, if someone built 10 affordable units, we would allow them to build 20 bonus units.
No.
Density bonus of 2 additional
Market price.
which is
Regular.
not affordable.
Right.
Density bonus of 2 additional market price units shall be allowed for each additional affordable unit. So if you build 10 affordable, you get to build 20 at market price. I mean, that's the way,
But
I
then
think
it all,
that's what that's saying in my
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're fine.
But then it also reflects to the area that you have. So you still have to start with what your base density would allow. So it still depends on, you have to start with what you're currently permitted, and then you go from there.
So we have an amended PUD,
Well,
and they want, that's what this is.
So they're two separate items.
So we have a new PUD.
So I'll go through an
PUD.
example for new PUD. So
And do even like 100.
we have a new PUD. We have a new PUD, and the PUD, again, it's different than, so that's the zoning district. It's different than getting incentives to do extra units or more units than would be permitted. So you have a new PUD, and per that PUD, you have 100 units. Because it's a new PUD, and that's a new zoning district that would be ultimately approved by ordinance by council, under the current regulations, 10 of those units would have to be affordable or workforce housing. Under the proposed language, so it's still 100 units regardless. So 90 would be market rate, 10 would be workforce or affordable housing. Under the proposed ordinance, it's still 100 units, but 80 would be market rate, 20 would be required to be affordable or workforce housing. That's a separate regulation than the one in Article 6 that talks about the eligibility requirements.
So anything.
that's the first example.
So this is how I read it. So you have 80 and 20. If they give you the ability, so if they wanted to build 80, if they do 21, that's how I read it. A
They're not
density
allowed-
bonus of 2 additional market price units shall be allowed for each additional unit. So if they do 21 units, we'll give them 82.
That's separate. So PUDs aren't eligible for Article 6.
I'm reading Article 4. I'm
So
still on
Article 4.
We're on Article 4.
For amended PUDs.
PUDs that include more than 20% workforce affordable. So if they say, we're going to do 22%, which gives them 22 out of 100. A density bonus of 2 additional market price shall be allowed for each additional. So if they
They
do.
built 22 affordable, they could build 64 market price. Under the same 100,
That wasn't the intent. The intent was
that's what it's,
That's what somebody will find.
is that what y'all read it to be?
That wasn't the intent. We'll fix that.
Is that what it's, I mean,
Not what it's
is
supposed
that
to
what it
say.
says to you? Is that the way y'all see it, Terry?
Well, that's what it's supposed to say. Or y'all reword it, but that's the way I read it too.
We'll reword it. And I apologize for being confused because that was not the intent. And I'm
Catch,
just
Larry.
reading the slide here. That
Keep
was
going,
not the
Larry.
intent by
I
any
read it
means.
and I couldn't even, it was no commas in there.
No, that was not the
Okay,
intent.
okay.
I apologize for that.
That's okay. So you'll
We
reword
will definitely
I like
fix that.
So it basically, if they're coming in a new PUD with 100 units, 20 of them have to be affordable,
Right.
period.
Affordable or workforce, correct.
Gotcha.
Correct.
80/20. Affordable.
Correct.
Going to give them 2, they're going to
Right.
put they get 2 more.
That's not how,
The limit.
okay, that's not how that was written.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, see, I was
That's
confusing
okay.
and clearly needs to be changed. So-
It's a confusing
Yes.
week. Okay. Any other questions on that one?
I do. So in this particular section, or in these 2 articles, can we look at or discuss the definitions of the 2 because they're different? And I think a lot of people get confused just in talking with constituents and looking at what people are putting out there between what affordable and workforce is, because it's not, essentially, if we're being honest, it's not the same thing. And I think it could be potentially be like a deterrent even for developers, and if they're coming into an area and have plans to put up certain type of housing and we're like put in affordable/workforce, well, some people will get away with it if they are putting affordable with our high average and median income, but those who are in that workforce bracket would never get the type of housing that those PUDs or developers would put in. So is there a way that we could like word that or make that the definitions of those 2 even possibly separate?
Oh, we certainly could as part of any proposed changes moving forward. This was our start and based on the meetings with the Affordable Housing Committee, but I mean, certainly that's why this workshop item, so.
Is that a discussion point with the Affordable Housing Committee? I mean, we've got to be careful of putting us in a pigeonhole that you have to do this, this, and this, because then we might be using our legal services more. But how do you encourage it? And do we have definitions for both of those?
We do have definitions, and it's something that we could discuss at an Affordable Housing Committee and move forward, but
Well, nationally,
y'all for
isn't the word affordable is under 80% a national model, and the workforce was considered 81% up?
yes.
So the 2 are somewhat inclusive to some degree, unless you just put an identification to it?
We could.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And though it's not, and I'm not saying that I would want in this particular zoning thing to say 20% needs to be what affordable, what workforce is. I'm saying in our discussion going forward of our text of what affordable and workforce is, if we could have some clarification on the 2, because they're not the same thing. Because by our current standards, you know, our workforce, if we're saying it's the service workers, if we're saying it's law enforcement, or we're saying teachers, they're not able to afford housing at that 100% or even with the 80% rate of the AMI is. And I'm just saying, like, if our language could change that, because in a sense, it's like we work against ourselves and people thinking, well, if they're building affordable housing for the workforce, well, where is it? Because none of the workforce is able to purchase that housing in these areas. So I'm not saying to change it
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, have it in here that developers have to do 10% workforce and percent affordable. I'm just saying, like, can we have that, the changing of those definitions going forward and like future things, so people aren't saying like, well, you're not technically doing that.
Let me chime in a little bit on that. What the Affordable Housing Committee has done is request a percentage of AMIs. So what you see here at 100% is the max that it could go, but 60 to 100% is what we're requesting. So the AMI is how we determine affordability, and 60% right now is, I believe, is affordable based on Beaufort County AMI centile. So we can get closer to what you're saying when we actually do the negotiation with the developer, saying, we want you to spread these affordable housing. If you're going to do 20, then we want to give you balance of between 20 to 100%. I mean,
I don't have
80
a-
to 100%. I'm sorry,
Yeah, I
60 to-
understand it. I'm just saying, like, in our definition of those two terms, they're different, because our AMI for Beaufort County is what, like 73, according to the
It's
statistics?
86,000 for a family of four, I think, a little over 86,000. And I think when we looked at this, Bridget, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, I think we looked at the fact that most of the service industry, which were not, maybe wrong terminology, teachers, policemen, firemen, the workforce would actually fall within the 100%. And that was one reason we scrapped the 120, because when you get above that, you can afford a $225,000, $250,000 house. So, you know, we did look at all of that.
Question on where we put this. Say we're passing this. This is new territory where the shoulds or coulds or shalls are, you know, we're really enforcing this. It's not optional anymore. How do we keep it from the deed restrictions? I mean, is there somewhere in this we need to be very clear that this 20% will not be on the investor market and will not be sold, you know, use it and lose it? Should we put it in something like this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Then we need to think about that wording.
May I jump in? In this section, and if you read, Heather sort of jump in, but it says, or until the deed restrictions at the very bottom of the page required by this section have expired. So in a different section, not on this page, it's very specific that you will have deed restrictions. All of that's laid out.
Yes,
And
and
so to your point, it's in there.
It would, I think it'd be good for the person looking on our website at this, see it in several areas. That same writing would be fine, I think.
And I'll be certain to bring forward those definitions and more information the next time we see this and move forward, so that I'll have all that information in one spot, because that's correct. This section has a lot more details and requirements on what is required. And also, like Councilman Hamilton stated, if an applicant proceeds forward with the development incentives, a housing plan is required to be approved by the town as part of that. So there's a lot more information that is required as part of that, and I'll be certain to have that for the Planning Commission and for you all as you move forward, so you have all that information.
Yeah, Mayor, following your comment, and I know we've all had these discussions in the past. We're starting to go down this road, but we don't really have a mechanism on how we're going to manage these items. For example, we got the apartment complex coming out near Seagrass. The gentleman the other night that we talked to, the development out near New Riverside, is going to do 10 of his homes. So we're just actually starting to migrate back into this again, and we've never really figured out how we're going to manage it, because you can have the deed restriction, but then you get into the payments and the rent and so forth, whether it's a home ownership or a rental. And so that's something that I'm just throwing out there we've got to be looking at before we get there.
moving in a good direction toward that. Anything else on this? Do you have all of our thoughts?
Yes, I
on
do.
that? Okay. And finally, we're number 5 on amendments of our same code, same different chapter, 28, utilities, Article 4, small cell facilities. Been a big topic of the Municipal Association.
Yes, and that is, so this would not be incorporated as part of the UDO. This would be, we're proposing to move this forward based on the model ordinance from the Municipal Association as a separate ordinance, so separate chapter. This is where we felt it would fit the best.
Yeah, is this something that can be added in all of our agreements, in our development agreements as well?
All cell facilities, the ordinance, I will certainly work with the town attorneys to how that moves forward. This, it's, yeah, and I'll get through that when we get through the kind of the meat of what's in this ordinance and the substance. But again, this is just to create that model ordinance. And again, this is a new ordinance that's recommended by the Municipal Association for everyone to adopt. I will say, there are several unknowns or things that, that we'll get into that do reference that we can review architecture, but to a point, and then we cannot. So it's, and I will look to the attorneys to help answer more specific questions. But really, there was a federal order that came through the FCC about this topic. And what we're trying to do is make sure that we comply with that and get an ordinance in place so that we can move forward with regulations and permits. And we don't want to lose out on that opportunity to have a say. So that's why staff has worked with the town attorneys and the town manager to bring this proposal forward and at least make sure that we're addressing it in some way. And there are also some federal bills that are, I believe, at the Senate that may affect what we move forward with. The ordinance, I can pull it up, but basically it references fees, maximum fees. It references where these would be located, and it is primarily, the purpose is for the right-of-way to install these small cells, which is basically, I would refer to it as a booster station. So rather than the telecommunications industry, rather than deal with private properties rights and these large towers and co-location and the agreements that are all involved with that, moved forward with the possibility again of these numerous boosters or small cells that would be placed on public utility poles in the right-of-way. And it's typically in mass, so it's typically at 20 or more in areas to, again, see this booster. We have not had any inquiries to this. I don't know as if we will see any applications or requests, but in order to at least review it and have an option, this we're moving forward with. Again, this is the model ordinance is recommended by the Municipal Association. There are some provisions that in certain districts you can regulate the aesthetics to a point, and that would be with our historic district or our highway corridor overlay district. So again, we would review it similar to any other structure in the right-of-way. But again, there is that legal limit that's been set, that if there's no other place to put it, if there's no other options, that there are some allowances that you are required to be allowed to make. So again, it's a lot of technical language in there, a lot of things that, again, it's our uncharted territory, so to speak. And it's just, again, we want to make sure that we meet that order to get something adopted, looking to, again, to Municipal Association based on their recommendations, and then, like I said, conversations with the town attorney to move forward. So there's some photographs of what this could be or what other municipalities have seen as far as what they would look like and what we could experience.
Thoughts on this?
Aesthetics, probably be a concern we would have. So do we have any pictures or any examples?
Yes, in the packet. There are some, so this is like a pole, and you see at the top, that's one of the small cells that could be. Here's another example. So they're typically on the light poles again, in the right of way.
Top, everything on the top?
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
The
And there are
box
some limitations on height.
That box one of the cells?
Yes, I believe so.
Or is it down below?
Well, in the unit, I will say there's two pieces to the unit. There's what's on the pole, and then there's a utility box. So there are two pieces.
While you're showing Fred that, have you talked to SCE and GM Palmetto Electric about not requiring them at all? I mean,
Well,
do
it
they
is.
have to go on existing poles?
Yes, the way the ordinance is written, and from what we understand, that is where they have to go, that's the way the federal law is written, that it has to go on existing poles in the right-of-way, publicly owned poles. And after this workshop, should I receive direction to move forward, we'll continue to have the conversations with the utility companies. Right now, it's not something that's come into this area, it's something that we've been requested from anyone, but that doesn't mean it won't happen.
One thing that plays into it, like the example that you have on the board there, where you flip that one.
Sorry.
Lighting pole like that, when you get into wind loading issues, is what happens. It depends on the type anchor you have. So that's something that you would have to weigh, with whoever, if you use an existing pole of such.
And that's one of the purposes, from how I've understand it, talking with the municipal association, is that in order to require a permit from someone who's requesting to do a small cell, we need to have an ordinance in place to allow that or require that. So that's certainly something we would look at, like you said, the placement, the height, the whatever permits are required, where that box is located, that it is in the right of way, just to outline some questions that we would have. Are there things to minimize the appearance where it's going to be located? Are there other options? And those are things that we would incorporate as we move forward.
There's something else that was intriguing. Don't expect to have any in our area.
At this time, right, I will say, like I answered the other question, at this point, I have not had any requests or pre-application meetings, but that doesn't mean it's not something we would have to deal with. But I'm not aware of anyone who's requesting to do this at this time.
Does this go to Planning Commission as well, or does this come back to
Well,
us?
per the statute, it's not required to go to Planning Commission. It's certainly something that we could bring forward to them with all of the other changes to receive any input that they have, because this is just part of it would just be part of the municipal code. Requirements-wise, it's just required to go to Town Council for first reading and second reading, but we can certainly.
We'll see that.
Yes, you will see this again.
Anything else on this, Council? Great. Thank you very much. Moving on to formal agenda, we have one item and then one added. First is our ATAX committee funding recs, and I saw Natalie somewhere. There you are.
I don't know what it is.
Natalie. Just while she's coming up, we did urge these applicants not to come tonight. So if there are any issues with this, I would ask council to let's table it if we have any issues with the funding and the recommendations, so they would have the ability to come and speak to it. So not expecting anything, but just in case.
Sorry, I'm just getting my item up. There we go. Good evening, Mayor and Town Council. You have before you the ATAX Advisory Committee recommendations for quarter ending December 31st, 2019. There are two applicants for your consideration for this quarter, totaling $21,652. At the time of the ATAC meeting that was held February 18th, there were $801,518,000 available for distribution, and that is split between both ATAC, state and local accommodations tax. The reason why I stated that is because the town had only received 1 month's worth of the quarter. So our funds were skewed a little bit. We have received the balance of that quarter, and so those funds from the state are more in line in what we have seen from local. But at that time of the committee meeting, those were the funds that were available. The first request is from Celebrate Bluffton, and this is a revision request of their current grant. They are looking to revise their Bluffton Buddy app and also include advertising and promotion of their revision. They're looking to do a Discover Bluffton in their first phase and then go to a Discover Low Country. And I've included what some of the materials would look like if you're interested. They're looking to go to more QR codes. Instead of having to download the full Bluffton Buddy app, you would be able to scan the QR code with your phone and then have the information come up that's more web-based and a little bit more flexible for people to come around and visit the locations. And then our second applicant is May River Theater. They're requesting support for 2 shows, Plaza Suite and the 25th Annual Putnam County Spelling Bee. When I looked at their website, they have postponed Plaza Suite. The date for when they are looking to have the show perform has not been set yet, but that has been postponed. But they are looking for $14,520 for support with advertising and production for those 2 shows. Normally, this is where I mentioned that we have applicants and whoever from the committee, and I will be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Go back to the first one. First,
Okay.
we'll do one at a time. So the first one is Bluffton Buddy. Questions on this of Natalie?
I do.
I have one too, but go for it. You go.
When they provide information next time, like they're saying 42% of those surveyed, 42% of what? The other thing was, since its inception, how many people have used it?
Yes, and I believe that the response that we received, they had taken the Arts and Seafood Festival tourism statistics as an item that they could maybe capture to go around then and look at our sites. So they do feel confident that with their new website that they will be able to grab some of that back-end information on who is potentially downloading the QR codes. I don't know if it goes into specifics as where those phones may be generating from tourist-wise, but they could give stats on who's scanning, who's getting the code, and who's looking at the information.
Question on that. I think it's interesting how codes were hot and then they died and now they're hot again.
Yep.
Did you ask, or more just so I'll know, are they getting permission to put these codes on existing signs? Or are they asking for signage, because you got to have a code somewhere to scan it? Did they say anything about that?
They didn't, but I think it's more geared towards this map in a way. So they'll have this map and this literature, and they'll be able to scan what's on that,
Okay.
where they're then located.
Okay. Anything else?
That makes sense.
That makes a lot more sense. This is something I would think if they should come to council and really explain when we get this going, if we approve it. I'd love to see a presentation of it and more info on what they're seeing. And they could do that at public comment and give us an update frequently. It would be
Yes.
really nice.
Sure.
Anything on this? Anyone else? So there's a amount requested, $7132, and amount recommended. Is there a motion to accept the ATAX committee's recommendations for Discover Bluffton, Celebrate Bluffton, Inc.? Is there a second?
Second.
There a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Are you comfortable with your questions?
I am.
moving forward? All in favor state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous. Next, May River Theater. Questions on May River Theater? Yes, sir.
Natalie, do we always pay for the movies production as well as assist for the movie production and advertising?
This is actually the first time that I've had the May River Theater come in since I've been involved with ATAX. But previously, yes, those rights in order to purchase the production have been supported by the town, as well as then any advertising materials to get those out to the public.
Production part, does that qualify for ATAX? What the rules that?
So you could look at it as, in order to have the show or the production, you would need to buy those rights. And so if you look at it similar to what we've done with the Hilton Head Symphony Orchestra, in order for them to have that event, they needed to have the tent. So we supported that tent in order for them to have the show.
Question on that. You said one of those events were postponed on their website. We pay them just like everyone else on receipt.
Yes.
So if
Yes.
they don't do that show, there's going to be a credit of some sort that will come back that will not be paid.
That's right. It's reimbursement based.
Gotcha. Anything else on this? Okay, so May River Theater requested $14,520, and the committee recommended $14,520. Is there a motion to accept their recommendation? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. Great job.
Thank you.
And then we have item 2, which I did not write down, but it has something to do with
Isn't it,
emergency meetings electronically.
right, it's for final reading under the emergency proclamation, so it does not need first and second reading.
Right.
First, I'd like to thank staff who's been working without sleep for quite a while, and my partner Richardson back here who's been handling most of it. This ordinance that you have before you, when I got here earlier this afternoon, I had a draft that was marked 2 p.m. I think Ms. Frazier was the only one who probably got a view of that. After Governor McMaster's I guess it started about 4:25, his talk this afternoon, we added Section 4, which was the tax implication deadline. So let me go through this ordinance as fast as I can for you.
1 minute. We don't have this
You
to
do
show
have
the Facebook. We don't have this to show on the screens. But can we put this in as attachment on our agenda so they can open it that way, just so they'll have it? Okay. I'm sorry.
Okay, sure.
I just couldn't see where it was coming up.
And, you know, I think I'm probably the oldest person here in the room, and I never thought we'd ever have to face anything like this before. I remember being a kid studying government a long time ago in college and learning about 50 million people dying in the 1918 Spanish flu and how that traveled around the world without airplanes. And so we are certainly in a different time, and I don't know what's happened in the last 2.5 hours. Scott's been looking. If there was something major that happened, we would. I do know that the RBC Heritage was canceled right about the time that we convened today. And as vice chairman of that foundation, I'm sad by that. I'm also happy that I'm in front of a group that supports it so handily every year. And we'll be back a little bigger and better next year. So thank you. All right, back to this emergency ordinance. It's designed to do essentially 4 things. The first is to give us a mechanism to have meetings if we can't get together in this room. It gives us the ability to have electronic meetings, as long as by telephone, Facebook, Skype, whatever. As long as all of you can hear and talk to each other, this ordinance will give you that ability to do things like that. That is Section 1 of this meeting, and it talks about, among other things, that the mayor would have to poll everyone to make sure that they were actually on the phone, that Individual votes would have to taken by voice vote. You couldn't just have a yay or nay or a unanimous vote. Minutes would have to be kept, or the session would have to be recorded. Robert's rules would have to be complied with. If we went into executive session, it would be under the same limited circumstances that we could in an open meeting. That essentially is, public comments would be suspended with any type of meeting that was held where we could not get together in this room. This whole ordinance has a shelf life of 61 days. That's at the end, but I'll say that now. The second portion of this ordinance gives the town manager authority to implement what he thinks are the correct and proper policies for the running of our government. He could revoke any special event permits that were up in the next couple weeks. He could limit any non-essential government services. He could require staff to work remotely from home. He could close town hall or any other public town facilities to the public during the duration of this pandemic. We would, the next section has to deal with, Section 3 deals with the suspension of municipal deadlines. We are primarily concerned with if something was sitting in Heather's department and we know that an application is in on day 1, a permit or a ruling has to be done by day 60? So if we, what's that?
Yes.
Action would have to be taken by day 60. This would suspend those type of deadlines. The law is not clear, and we spent a fairly considerable amount of time as to whether this suspension of municipal deadlines would have any impact on FOIA requests during this pandemic. We can't find anything anywhere that gives a yes or no answer to that. Under the terms of this, we will comply. We will attempt to comply 100% with FOIA requests if we can. But if there's nobody here to do them, this section may also give us some latitude in that regard. We will have FOIA requests, respond acknowledgments, but whether we will have the horsepower or the manpower in this building to do it otherwise, I am not certain. Tommy might be able to help on whether it could ever be done remotely. I doubt it, but we'll see there. And then lastly, Section 4 is the one we added this afternoon because Governor McMaster extended all tax payments in South Carolina for 60 days to June 1st. That would include A tax and H tax. And so we said municipality, just by way of information, he also extended income taxes. Don't have to be filed or paid until June 1st, but that's not a local tax, so we did not put it in this ordinance. Be happy to answer any questions. I did mention the 61-day shelf life. It's kind of like Cinderella when it strikes midnight, 61 days, this ordinance expires on its own terms. Be happy to answer any questions. This was, I would say, done hastily but done thoroughly. We tried to look at what the other municipalities and counties were doing around us. We looked at what Columbia was doing. We have closed the municipal court. That was done on a court order from Chief Justice Beatty at the end of last week. So we are moving as fast as our legs will allow us. Mark, anything you think I've missed on this emergency ordinance?
No, I think you hit it all. I think there's some things that might be coming in our future. I'll pick it up. I think there's some things that allow Mayor Salka, based upon your declaration of emergency order, to put some things in place. As an example, a moratorium on future permits and inspections, a curfew ordinance. We just don't know what's coming, but what the good part of the way this ordinance is set up is once the mayor has declared a state of emergency, she is allowed under that authorization to put some things in place. We are working closely with Beaufort County, with our police department, with Hilton Head Island, and all of our other regional partners to stay completely lockstep with them. So we're trying not to get out in front of them, but there's going to be some things that are specific and particular to Bluffton, different than they might be somewhere else. We just don't know. And I think this ordinance is in place. It allows flexibility. It allows us to make sure that we're communicating directly to you. And what it doesn't do which I like, is it doesn't just lock us down and leave the mayor and the manager to figure all this out. It allows for future council meetings digitally, and so we can keep communicating. It also allows for planning commission digitally. I would think that all of those things in our region, this isn't a hurricane. We didn't evacuate, and people aren't all over the southeast hiding from a storm for a few days. This is so unknown. It could be over in 3 weeks. It could be over by July. We don't know. And so we're doing our best to not shut down services, but I'm doing my best to make sure that the folks that are in place and in charge are not stretched so thin. So that ordinance allows me to make some decisions I struggle with. I talk with Terry. He's a great confidant. And on the other side of me, I have this gentleman right here, Scott, who's seen a lot more than me from the military. But a bunch of us, and I appreciate calling all of you to bounce some things off. As an example, for the time being, our public restrooms at our parks are closed. Why? Not because I don't want to clean the bathrooms, but I just don't have all the resources to clean this building for you all. Before you got here tonight, this town council chambers was scrubbed with a bleach-like solution and sterilized. We have employed a culture of infection control, and that's a lot more than. I chased Heather out of her office today. She knows that. We are taking this so seriously. It's a true story. Because we are locking down and cleaning, and then, so as an example, we'll clean again when you leave tonight. And so that doesn't let us to get out to the restrooms. We have a contractor that can go clean, but I'm not 100% confident in what they're doing when we're not there either. And so they might be stretched thin. And so what we're really trying to do now by locking down is squash that curve, not stretch our resources so thin, and not cross, I would say, infect each other. It's difficult. That ordinance allows me to make some decisions. It also lets us keep talking. Long story.
Is this supported by all municipalities? Do all of our municipalities in the county have the same thing to look at?
They're all working on it. I don't think any of them have level at this point. Columbia, am I right?
A little louder because you might need, y'all are way close to each other. I'm not touching them.
I'm not touching her.
Taken provisions from Georgetown and Charleston and tried to incorporate them all into a single document for you. We have not, to the best of my knowledge, shared that with any of the other municipalities in Beaufort County yet, but we certainly can and we certainly will tomorrow. We just were trying to put it together at the last minute here.
So any questions of this from council? We need to vote on this. I know it was last minute. I did not get to my computer at 2 to read it.
I will add.
Briefly read over it a minute ago.
I'll add too. Hilton Head Island is not going to adopt the electronic meeting ordinance yet. I believe Port Royal may consider and Beaufort may consider. I talked with everybody today a couple times. So it's a mixed bag. That's why I say it allows us to do some things here differently than everywhere else.
Just this meeting tonight, if we would have passed this, we would have had another opportunity to do it rather than cancel it. Is that kind of the gist of it? To
Right.
give us a tool if you're
could be-
really nervous and this is another month to
Right.
keep things going, at least we have this, but if we can come together, we can.
I thought it was
Self-quarantine,
Right,
and then you could still participate.
right.
And we thought it was important to get it on your agenda tonight.
I think it's great.
Instead of holding a special meeting.
I would just like to say, I think this is, and even earlier, wanted to mention it. Thank you to all of town staff, Mark, you guys, everyone's done an awesome job in controlling this and even mitigating things out to us. And I think the way that you guys have got ahead of a lot of things in comparison to even other areas, I think is awesome and says a lot about your dedication and how serious you're taking this.
I
So
agree.
thank you guys.
Thank you, yes.
Yeah, I have no problem with any of it. I just want to get this out. I'd like to see our restrooms at our public parks open, at least during the day. They don't have to be open at night, but during the day, because people are going to be out, kids are out, people are going to be using them. And I'm quite certain we contract that cleaning out anyway, So if we tell the contractor not to clean it out, we're either, in our contract, we're going to have to pay them anyway, more than likely. I would imagine that's the way their contract reads. So if at all possible, and if anybody can agree, I'd like to have those restrooms cleaned twice a day and stay open during this time unless something gets real bad, unless it gets to where we all have to
I'm only on the fence with that
ourselves on the
because
boat.
it's almost like, are we encouraging people to do the opposite of what's been asked, and that's for people to kind of stay like home and kind of out of areas as much as possible?
Thinking outside is the best place to be.
Why did you suggest we close them? Maybe give us that, because
Absolutely.
it's your crew.
Yes, so we know who they all are. There's 5 or 6, maybe 7 of them. I'm trying to count how many on the spot here, but there's about 7 folks internally Public Works, and so we have them cleaning and closing down all of our facilities. And so right out of the gate, I know I wasn't going to get to the bathrooms 3 times a day like we need to. I think even more in a public restroom. So I knew we weren't going to get there, so I made the decision to keep the resources where I need them, and that's our facilities, our public facilities first, to get a real good deep clean. I pulled them off those bathrooms, and I locked the doors. I didn't just leave the bathrooms open and let them contaminate. I do believe that once I catch up with this and we know what our interim norm looks like, once the buildings are shut down. So as an example, most of town halls shut down. If you haven't been back, I don't encourage you to go, but the hallways have do not enter signs. We've scrubbed the rooms, locked the doors, and posted signs, do not enter. And so only a few parts of our building. Police department ditto. None of us are going beyond there. But we closed down, we cleaned and closed down every other facility with the exception of PD, Public Works, and a little bit of this building. Once I catch my breath a little bit and know where the team is and know where the contractors are, and if this is lasting a lot longer, we're going to have to reopen those bathrooms and probably clean them 5 times a day. I have shut them so that I can let my team absorb and cope, right? They also have some stress, but absorb what's going on, cope with it, get to where they need to logistically, where I want them to be. Once we close some things down, there's going to be a lot less to do. It's kind of a front-end preparation and preservation. I do believe that people that are self-quarantined at this level, where we're teetering between OPCON 2 and OPCON 1, need to be at home self-quarantined. I will go on record to say that as a manager, caring about the public health, safety, and welfare of my team, I also don't want my team out there cleaning things that they don't need to, potentially exposing themselves to be infected, to maybe cross paths with a police officer to get infected. That's the only reason I'm doing that. I'm learning as I go, as we all are. So I would think that if we're staying in this state longer than 2 weeks, I'll definitely, and you know how I operate, I'm going to call all of you and seek your advice, not call all of you and tell you what I'm doing.
And this ordinance gives him the ability to do that. So.
I'm fine with what you're saying. I worry that we could lead to a lot of liability. I'm worried about the playgrounds, but
Open them back
Right.
up.
yeah, but
Right, and there are some communities that have, by ordinance, closed the parks. But if we close the parks, are we going to have our police officers stretched thin responding to calls? That's not anything I believe in. I simply closed the parks for a minute to try to figure out what this is. 3 days ago, I thought this was a 2-week squash the curve, come back to normal.
can we put up some signage or Terry, to say we expect you to, bring your hands in, to give some kind of freedom of us being liable at the parks. Please remember to wash your hands when you get home, use sanitizer. Is there not some temporary signage we can put up on our parks just to
We will.
constantly remind social distancing? I mean, y'all, that is the key. I hear it from every medical end. Even as of today.
We will, and I struggle with it. To Councilman Toomer's point, it's the best point. It's kept me up late at night asking people close to me what they think of it. And because if you're going to go to the park, and if you're there, we're locking the door, and what we're wanting everybody to do is wash their hands. And so now we've taken that opportunity away from them. But if the bathrooms are open, we're still encouraging people to come to the park.
Mark, can
How can you wash your hands?
you check with some of your compatriots that are at your level? Because I have to be honest, it was on my list.
Dan's talking, Dan.
It was on my list of things also to ask the question because it's a double-edged sword. If you're a mom, and I know we're trying to stay away from each other, but I saw kids at the playground on my way here. And after 2 to 3 weeks, or it could be a month or 2 months, people are going to go absolutely insane.
Right.
But if it's not in our best interest, come back and tell us what you're learning from other people.
And I'll do that, I definitely will. I also think this, if the region isn't closing their parks, and like my own family bouncing off the walls, and the kids are going to the parks, I'm going to reopen them. What I've been doing for the last couple days is simply deep cleaning the facilities we have, closing them down, posting the signs, and then thinking about what's next. I couldn't think about everything at once. It was too daunting. So what I would imagine is if we don't come back in this room for 60 days, and we're meeting digitally, electronically, then my team won't have to be in here thinking about town hall and council chambers. They can be thinking about public restrooms in the public realm, public health, safety, welfare.
Can you close? I'm sorry.
I have a question too while we're in this conversation. So what would be the frequency once you get, a schedule established? What would be the frequency of cleaning the playgrounds?
Well, 2 days ago, I was hearing twice a day, no, sorry. I was hearing, twice a day a few days ago, and then lately I've heard 3 times a day. But, it only takes 1 second for somebody with COVID-19 to infect. So, as often as we possibly can is the answer. It has to be a frequency. You have to enter at your own risk. To Mayor's point, you have hand sanitizer. Between Kim and I, we have like 3 bottles of hand sanitizer on our desk. If that's what we're told to do by the CDC, that's what we're going to do.
You want to give any of that away?
And I will tell you, well, that's the one thing about the bathrooms. Just lock our toilet paper.
Yes.
A lot of parents are going to bring their sanitizers to the playground. We've got to realize there will be more cleaning on the playground. I think we're all on the fence on the bathrooms. Maybe think about closing some.
Yes.
Do we have to have 2 right here? Do we have to have, I don't know. I think you've got to be the leader in that.
Yes, ma'am. And
Do we do some signage like you suggested? I mean, this could be longer term than we think, that there is. And the other thing is maybe just only consider the playgrounds. Don't consider everything else, just where the parents are trying to get their kids. I don't know.
Right.
I'm just throwing it out there.
And so we're talking, we're not talking 30 parks, right? We're not a big place. We're talking, for now, in my mind, it's Dubose Park. It's not Oyster Factory Park bathrooms because we aren't allowing any.
How about Field of Dreams?
Yeah, Du Bois and
Dreams.
Austin.
Field of Dreams.
Most
So
playgrounds.
we can talk about Oyster Factory. People are going to go see the river, and they do have a bathroom, but
People are still going in the river. When they come out the river, they got to
they use the
have a
bathroom.
place.
Understood.
The ladies,
Okay.
everybody.
Okay, anything else on this
Those 3.
one?
Yes, ma'am, I have something.
I promise in a couple days, if not before, I'll wrap my mind around this.
Well, we have, Terry, if we have to utilize this process to be recorded.
Yes, it would be.
Okay.
Assuming we have the technology to
You're sitting in the room with the mayor and the rest of us are calling in, you can record that for public knowledge. Right. And then the only other little comment, and Mark, I'm with Bridget, I commend all of you and the mayor, everybody doing what you're doing. It's a trying time. It's, like Terry said, we've never been here in this spot, so we're making it up as we go. But I've noticed even today, the state and the federal government, like in the state of South Carolina, if I understood it correctly, you can't even evict people from their residence through May, or like the electric companies can't turn your lights off. And so there's things that may impact us as a municipality that we can still continue to gather this information and just keep feeding it out there because they're impacting us.
You said something I didn't hear, though, and I've had just the sadness you feel of people because there are many people in this country, but in our state, that really are check to check and hardly can make it now. Did the governor say they can't be evicted from any rental? I said utility, but I didn't hear they did say that.
The president said that.
President.
President said that.
Well, no, the
So if-
Supreme Court, excuse me.
So if there's an
Supreme Court.
eviction, now, it doesn't mean they don't have to pay it down the road, but for whatever period of time, because I had 3 different people text me today
I have to
from.
say, I'm sorry, I have not heard that.
I hadn't
South
either.
Carolina Supreme Court.
South Carolina Supreme Court, well, South Carolina Supreme Court closed down the magistrate's court last week, which is where all evictions happen, so.
Here comes Richardson with his phone.
6 feet, Richardson. Oh, my goodness.
Oh, why don't, y'all,
Issued an order today. All evictions currently ordered and scheduled statewide from March 17th through March 31st shall be rescheduled to a
evictions.
date no later than May 1st. That means if you have an eviction hearing currently scheduled between today and the end of March, it is rescheduled.
How about
Case-by-case exemptions for evictions may be made for matters that involve essential services and/or harm. So it doesn't mean you can't have the hearing.
Okay, okay.
Well, just saw MVP LaBruce in action.
Okay, let's move on this. Are we okay with how this is written? I don't have what's the motion? To
Motion
approve,
is to approve an emergency ordinance.
your motion to approve the emergency ordinance of the town of Bluffton, as listed with all the verbiage that's listed on the current ordinance that's in my hand. Is that okay? Okay. And we'll get you a copy, Kason.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. And can we give the paper? This? Okay. That paper right there, who's working remotely. Okay, consent agenda, we have monthly reports, town manager's report, the agreement relating to Buck Island Simmonsville sanitary sewer are all consent agenda. If anything needs to be pulled off, speak now. If not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move.
Is there a second?
Second.
We're slow on your seconds tonight. Any discussion? All in favor, state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Before we leave, I'm just looking at some of these comments, which I'm going to respond, maybe someone can respond to. But we are in a level of service starting tomorrow where people can still renew their business licenses and they can do it online anytime.
Yes, ma'am.
So you can renew your business license, you can still get a building permit, and we're still doing inspections starting tomorrow. We had a little hiccup in communication with the county, but we are on track. So essential staff, but life moves on as normal as we can be.
Essential and some non-essential.
Okay. And y'all, we have a lot of restaurants and we have a lot of businesses that need our help. And we had a great conversation today about what we can do to help advertise and publicize that. Every restaurant's going to have to deliver or curbside. No chicken in the grocery stores, and I don't mean that lightly, so why don't you order from some of these fine people that live in our town and take advantage of it. Social media is going to be crazy with it. I think both chambers are putting out really great messages of what's going on. So let's please support our community. They will be here, and we will sure expect them to help us one day soon, so we need to support them. Buy a gift card, buy a card from your favorite restaurant. They didn't mention food trucks, and they didn't mention coffee shops today, so I guess that's public, and there's no seating, so I don't know if coffee shops have to close or not.
No indoor dining.
No indoor
No
dining.
bars.
Okay, so
No indoor eating or drinking.
Okay, so no
Everything's gotta be
indoor
outside.
dining, so you can you can go in and take it to go, and you can still go in, you can still go in your coffee shops, and you can still go to your food trucks. So please do that, and is there a motion? Is there anything else?
Oh, and all families also, the school district has an awesome schedule going for pickups for breakfast and lunch. It's on the district's website, so people can take advantage of that. And Bluffton locations are Red Cedar Elementary and Bluffton High.
Are volunteers allowed to come help or not? Or is it just staff that they're paying?
Just staff, but I mean, if someone wants to be out, like I was out there today just helping them pass out books and stuff, they can.
A lot of people want to help. A lot of people want to help, but we don't know where to put them. So, and a public comment is over, but we can talk to you after we adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We're adjourned. We're adjourned. Y'all have a good night. Well, you can tell, well, we're adjourned.